This is Dr. Rosie Kuhn, and this podcast series is called Spiritual Immersion, Taking the Plunge. And the intention of these podcasts, this podcast series, is to provide some information and some stories and some skills and hints and tools, perhaps, of what this process is and how to go through it, how to be with it, how to ignore and avoid and distract yourself from it, which a lot of us are doing right now, and how to step softly into this process. For me, a spiritual immersion process, and I really emphasize that immersion process, is that we are consciously choosing to incrementally move ourselves into deeper and deeper levels of knowing ourselves as spiritual beings, and knowing ourselves as divine, sacred beings in our humanness and our human experiences, but also in our spiritual essence self. So today I want to focus on one of the major foundations for me of this work, which is that it's fundamental that we begin to utilize more consciousness, more intelligence, and less automatic thinking, automatic processing. So the reason that I'm focusing on this is because so much of what happens to us in our life is based on automatic, instantaneous, impulsive interpretations that we're making without any thought, if you will. It just is. And in that way, we are not at choice about how to actually choose and how we choose to choose what we choose. So in a sense, most of us are choosing from fear. Most of us are afraid that we are going to be rejected, abandoned, betrayed. Most of us are afraid that we're not safe and we are not smart and we don't have a knowing and that we're going to be wrong. And so we're always looking to other people or other things outside of ourselves that's going to tell us what to do. One of the elements of coaching that for me is really important is the concept that I am a thinking partner for people. And I start out by saying, what is it you want? And then I listen to what people want, not only in terms of the material desires, but also the feelings and the experiences that they are wanting to have by having the material thing that they're looking for. I also ask, what's the obstacles in the way? What's in the way of you having what you say you want? And 99.9 of the times out of 10, what's in the way is the thinking, the interpretations, the judgments, the assessments, the limited, constrained ideas that keep anything from happening for you because your perceptions are saying, I can't have it for whatever reason. So the second question is, what's in the way? Third question is, what needs to shift so that those obstacles, in a sense, dissipate, dissolve, disappear, and you now have what you want? What needs to shift? The fourth question is, what will you practice to make those shifts so that those obstacles disappear, so that you can have what you say you want? So those four questions, to me, are foundational in any coaching relationship. And I coach myself with those all the time. I can ask myself those questions. And if I truly listen and be present to, I'm going to hear the answers. And generally the ones that I don't want to hear is what I have in the way that I don't want to let go of. Because I don't want to let go of it, I'm afraid to let go of, as Yoda says, I'm afraid to let go of what I don't want to lose. But that doesn't allow me to have what I want. It just keeps me from not losing what I'm afraid to lose. So as a coach, a spiritual coach, transformational coach, as a coach, I'm a thinking partner. And I'm listening for how you think and what your interpretations are, what your perceptions are, what your opinions are, what your judgments are, and where you're limiting your own potential, where you're limiting your own expansion, where you put your faith and where you don't put your faith. All of those things which are so elementary to cultivating a relationship with who we are beyond the 3D world, beyond our consensus reality. You'll hear me mention the book Oneness a lot because it's one of my Bibles for my spiritual evolution process, my spiritual ascendance process. And in the second chapter, it says something like, we are here as human beings to completely reject consensus view of reality. Now, that is a big leap from perhaps our toe, stepping in with our toe into the water to see if we want to go further, to reading something like, we're here to completely reject consensus view of reality. And, but it gave me that sentence, that we're here to completely reject consensus view of reality, gave me an idea of, okay, if that's true, if that's what I'm here to do from a spiritual perspective, then I have to start thinking about how I think about things, how I allow thoughts to enter my being, my mind, how I allow those thoughts to influence me emotionally or energetically, physically, and how I allow myself to interpret that as I'm sick or crazy or I'm depressed or whatever else I am interpreting myself as, something most likely negative or wrong, and how that further negates and limits my capacities to have what I want. So again, this work as a spiritual immersion process is to begin the process of reclaiming our intelligence. And as we are doing that, we have to say, this belief that I've been living by for all of my life doesn't work for me anymore. And so I'm going to let that go because that belief doesn't work for me anymore. For instance, I grew up Catholic, and there's a lot of dogma involved with Catholicism that didn't work for me. There was some stuff that worked for me, but the concept of hell and being a bad person and original sin, which meant I would never get to heaven, those concepts, and that I was sinned and I was damned, those concepts limited my perception of myself as a whole being and a being that's loved by God. And so I had to start making choices based on, in a sense, logical, rational thinking versus here's the belief and the dogma of a particular church, and are those actually working for me to live in that perspective? And so I had to utilize my intelligence, utilize my wisdom, utilize my truth, as opposed to just, well, I'm afraid that if I let that go, this was part of my conversation. If I'm afraid if I let that go, that let go of the idea that there's a hell. Gracie's with me today. If I let go of that, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe there is a hell, but all those maybes just limit my potential. Gracie, stop. Limit my potential to explore who I am as a person without sin and only love. And yes, I make mistakes, and can I be in a state of absolution that God forgives me when I say, please forgive me, this was a mistake, and then forgives me rather than me having to carry the guilt and shame. So again, what I'm looking at and wanting to point to is that as a thinking partner, and for you to become your own thinking partner, you begin to look at beliefs and interpretations, looking at your contexts around you, around the world, around love, around possessions, around work and career and creativity, that you begin to say, how am I looking at this? What's my thinking patterns? And are those patterns working for me? Are they causing me struggle, suffering, and limited abilities to know myself as my fullest expression in my divine self? So that's what I want to leave you with today, is the sense of, number one, we live our life based on beliefs and interpretations. We make interpretations like instantaneously before we even have a thought. We have an interpretation and that doesn't make sense, but unconsciously something shows up that says, oh, that's a chair. Rather than discovering and exploring, oh, what is this in front of me? This is a chair. But we make our interpretations so quickly about people and places and things and thoughts and opinions and in, everything, that we don't actually give ourselves time to think about it in terms of what's really true about this. And what am I really thinking about this? And how do I utilize the intelligence that I have so that I'm looking at this with like the full bandwidth and not just a limited filter on this perspective. And I want to do that so that I can know myself, who I am versus who I've always tried to be, or who I thought I should be, or who my parents wanted me to be that I never was, so now I feel guilty, or who I should be for my children or my spouse, my partner, who I should be for my boss. It's like who I should be is not the one that is actually the spiritual being who's here to learn how to thrive and express ourselves in our fullest natural creative expression. So that's pretty much it for today. I hope that's clear. And we will continue to be working on these, with these ideas, and hopefully they'll build over time so that you get a sense of, oh yeah, I see how I'm continually in a state of anxiety because here's what I'm thinking. I was talking to my sister today and she says, I'm worried about this. And I go, well, what's the point of worrying about it? There's nothing you can do about it. And she goes, you're right. And then she says something else about worrying about something else. And we just laughed because that worrying is creating a constrained idea versus what's actually the truth about the situation. Is there really a need to be worried? And there isn't. So those moments of really looking at that, because she said, and I said, hey, look, I just don't even think about that. She goes, I need to cultivate that awareness. I need to live that way. Okay, great. I'm excited about that. And then she says, but I'm worried about, and then she goes back into her story, the interpretations without the true looking at who she is inside this. All right. I'm repeating myself, I think. All right. Big hugs to you. If you want to see more of my writing, you can find a lot of videos, blogs, and books at theparadigmshifts.com. And that's pretty much it. All right. Bye for now.